Okay, good evening everyone, and we have another week, usually of the weekly Parsha, but it's also several days before Chanukah, so I thought we'll take advantage of getting together tonight and learning some of the ideas about Chanukah that are coming upon us, because next week on Wednesday night is the shul's official Chanukah party, so there won't be a class next week. Maybe if I have time, I'll try to record something in advance and send it out, but in the meantime, this might be our only shir about Chanukah together, so let's speak about Chanukah. The Ramchal and the Maharal, I saw this week also in the Sifrei Chasidus by the Hasidim, they all write a very similar idea about the Yomim Tovim of Klal Yisrael. If you look at the world, the way that a Yom Tov, the way that a festival works, it's always a commemoration of something that took place 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And so we gather together, or the world will gather together on those exalted, noble days, and they will commemorate the events that took place once upon a time. 4th of July, you get together and you commemorate what took place when America was gaining its independence, and that's why it's a sacred custom to have barbecues and to watch football games and to go into the pool. These are all ways that we commemorate the independence of the United States of America. So it will be a Thanksgiving, so you're commemorating when the Pilgrims came and they hit Plymouth Rock and they ended up overtaking the land there, and they had their cornucopia of all of their fruits and their vegetables. It's a commemoration. But Klal Yisrael's holidays are not commemorations. On the other hand, explains the Ramchal that when it comes to a Jewish holiday, we are going almost like going back in time to the original sparks of Kedusha that were existing in the world at the time that that holiday was taking place. And whatever ruchnius, whatever spirituality, and whatever growth Klal Yisrael experienced, and whatever triumphs they overcame, and whatever victories they won, and whatever levels that they reached in their personal and their communal life of Avodas Hashem, of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so all of that is coming back into the world once again on the Yom Tov that we are celebrating. We are not commemorating, we are reliving, or living even for the first time, as we're going to say in our davening all throughout Chanukah. Ala nisim, all the miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, she'asa nisim lavzeh b'yamim hahem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made in those days, b'zman hazeh, in this time. So did Hashem make the miracles 2,000 years ago for the Jews that were living in Eretz Yisrael? Or is it b'zman hazeh, is it right now? Explains the Ramchal and others that everything that took place back then, we're revisiting all of those koiches, all of that potential, all that ability right now once again. So whatever the Jewish people were fighting against, and whatever they were dealing with, and whatever the challenges were of Klal Yisrael 2,000 years ago in the times of Chanukah, and whatever strength they found inside of themselves to overcome the enemy of the Greeks, that means every single Jew, this year, Tavshin Pei Vav, in 2025, can reach back in to those well springs of the Kedusha, of the Chashmonaim, of the Maccabees. They can reach back into the energy that was there. They can dedicate themselves once again to the service of Hashem. And we can glean, and we can gain, and we can elevate, and we can grow in ways that you cannot grow any other time of the year. The 8 days of Chanukah, they were given to us. 8 days of light, 8 days of bracha, 8 days of blessing, 8 days of elevation to illuminate our lives for now and for the rest of the year, Be'ez Hashem. So in order to understand the nature of the nisayon, of the challenge of the Jewish people, so let's just go back a little bit into the mind frame and the mindset of the Yavanim, of the Greeks, and what they were trying to accomplish to overtake and to destroy us. They understood that Klal Yisrael is a very precious nation. There was no doubt about that in their mind. Because if you think about it, you have the Greeks that are the superpower of the world, They are conquering pretty much all of civilization. And they're going to the greatest and the biggest of the nations, and they're demolishing them one by one. And every country that they pass through, everyone is enamored by the Greeks, and they want to be on their side. The culture, the art, the science, the astronomy, the philosophy, the body, so everything that they had was something that was fascinating to the New World. And on their way to conquer the world, they take a little detour to a little tiny country called Israel, Eretz Yisrael, to a little tiny nation called the Jewish people. You've just conquered some of the largest nations in the world, and you're taking a detour. You, the great Greeks, are wasting your time to go and conquer the smallest nation and the smallest piece of land in the world. Why would the Greeks do such a thing? It doesn't behoove someone of their greatness, of their stature, to go and find one little tiny corner in the world that has a few Jews that are living there and decide we're going to go and we're going to destroy them as well. What was bothering the Greeks about the Jews? And the Maharal explains to us that what was bothering the Greeks was that as great as they were, and as masterful as they were in the world, and as much as everybody was bowing down to the great Greeks and everything that they stood for, and they wanted the Western culture to permeate throughout all of the lands, there's one nation that refuses to bow down to the ways of the Greeks, and there is one nation that lives on a higher level, a greater level, a more exalted, noble level than the Greeks knew that they would ever be able to achieve and reach in their lives. And that's those Jews that are living in the land of Israel, in Jerusalem, where there's a Beis HaMikdash, a temple. And it was driving the Greeks crazy. How could it be that there's one nation that is more than we do? That is a higher level than we are? That is more philosophical, more brilliant, more wise than we are? How could such a thing be? And they realized that the one thing that the Jews have that they don't have, because remember, the Greeks, they have everything. If you have a checklist of what makes a nation a great nation, they've got everything checked off on that list. But there's one thing they don't have, and they can never have. And that's Torah. They could never have the Torah. And as a result of that one thing that they were lacking, and they realized that's what makes the Jews the Jews. Jews are not Jews just because we were born to a Jewish mother, and because we like gefilte fish and matzah balls. That's not what makes us Jews. What makes a Jew is because we have Torah and mitzvahs, which is our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Greeks did not have that. And they knew that's what makes us special. So they decided we're going to go into Eretz Yisrael. We're going to go into the holy city of Yerushalayim. And we're going to go to the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, unlike the other enemies of the Jewish people, who were very barbaric and very uncouth. They came in there, they just destroyed the land of Israel. We're not like that. We're too refined for such a thing. We are too noble to live such a life. So we will go in and we will allow the Jews to remain in the land of Israel. And they can congregate in the Beis HaMikdash in the Holy Temple. And they can even offer sacrifices if they would like to. But we've got to change the rules so that it's not the Torah that is dictating the way that they're going to live their lives. It has to be the Grecian Yavin ideologies that is going to teach them how to live their lives. And if we can get Klal Yisrael to assimilate into our culture, into our people, into our ideologies and our philosophies of what the meaning of life is all about, that will be the greatest victory for the Greek people. More than conquering physically the greatest nations of the world, if we can conquer the greatest nation of the world, the godly people, Klal Yisrael, that will be the mastery of the Yavanim, of the Greeks, over the New World. And so when they came into Yerushalayim, they came up with 3 terrible decrees that they wanted to place upon the Jews. And with all of their intellectual searching, with all of their expert drisha v'chakira that we would call, which means they're delving into the Jewish religion and the Jewish people, they said if we can weaken them in these three areas, we will then have a stronghold on them, and we will be able to bring them closer to us and pull them away from their godly divine life of Torah and of mitzvahs. So they came up with 3 decrees which they felt were the cornerstone of the identity of a Jew. Now we have to know that all of the enemies of the Jewish people, they're not usually dumb. They're usually very smart. They're usually brilliant. They follow the history of the Jewish people. They look inside of the Chumash. They see in the Torah. They see what makes a Jew a Jew. And so the Greeks, who were the wisest and the most brilliant of all the nations, and in their world of philosophy understood a lot, they came to the conclusion that the following 3 mitzvahs, if taken away and abolished from the practice of the Jew, it will destroy the very spiritual fiber of who the Jewish people are, and then we'll be able to bring them along. And those 3 mitzvahs were Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, sanctifying the new moon, and the treasured, hallowed mitzvah of bris milah, of circumcision. And so they right away came into the land, and they made these decrees. No more Shabbos. If we catch you, we'll kill you. No more Rosh Chodesh. You can no longer sanctify the new moon. And if we catch a single Jew making a bris, that's it. Off with their heads. We're going to kill them. Now the question is, why these 3 mitzvahs? Why did the Greeks understand these 3 things were like the battle cry of Klal Yisrael? They're the cornerstones of our emunah, of our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if these 3 mitzvahs are part of us, then we can be indefensible, indefeatable. And if these 3 mitzvahs are taken away from us, we could be destroyed, one Jew at a time. They'll come in the masses, they'll assimilate, they become what's called misyavnim. They become like the Greeks themselves, abandon the ways of Torah and of mitzvahs, and they buy in to the Greek culture and ideology. So I'd like to go through these mitzvahs one by one, just to have some idea, because I believe that if these are the things that they were trying to abolish from our practice, then these are perhaps 3 things that we have to be mechazik ourselves in during this Yom Tov of Chanukah. Shabbos. Shabbos, we know, is an ois. It's a sign that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made between us and between Him. And Klal Yisrael is instructed, on the 7th day you shall rest, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu ceased to work on the 7th day. And the reason that you are resting is because you need to know the following. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. He made an entire universe. And He's running the world 24/7 all by Himself. You think that you're such a big macher, you're such a great person, you're the one that is running the world, you go to work, you make the money, you make the deals, you do this, you do that, you make the world go round. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my dear friend, you don't have to tell me how to do my job. I know very well how to run the world. On Shabbos Kodesh, you sit back and you relax and you do nothing. And let me take care of you. And you know what you'll realize on Shabbos? By you sitting back and refraining from all malacha, all prohibited labor and work, by you not getting on your phone, and you not going in your car, and you not watching TV, and you not answering an email, and you're not listening to music, and you're not going to the beach, and you're not cooking anything or anything of that nature. You're not creating anything. All of the malachas, all the prohibited work that we can't do, it's something that creates a new reality as a result. You don't have to do anything. Says Hashem, I do it all by myself. And just like you realize on Shabbos that I'm doing everything by myself, it's supposed to teach you for the rest of the week, I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, am the one that is running the world. Your mission, your job is to serve me but don't worry, I can take care of the world and the planet all by myself. Shabbos is a day that the Jew turns off the world that we are a part of 6 days of the week, and we are able to commune with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're able to think, we're able to have clarity, we're able to hear the voice of our neshama, of our soul that's inside of us. We're able to see what our spiritual aspirations really truly are. And we're able to grow in our connection with Hashem, with His Torah, with His mitzvahs, in ways that we cannot any other day of the week. And so when Shabbos comes, Ba Shabbos, Ba Menucha, when Shabbos comes, Menucha, peace, comes along with it. What is the peace? It is an inner peace and tranquility that a Jew can only attain on Shabbos. If a Jew doesn't have the Shabbos, and he's running around in the rat race 7 days a week, and he never pulls away from all of the busyness that he has, and all of the pressure, and all the chaos, and all the noise and everything, he can never catch his breath and come in contact with himself and with Hashem. It's only because of Shabbos, when a person stops and shuts down and focuses on a world of ruchni, on a world of spirituality, that's when the Jew is able to reconnect. The Midrash tells us that when Klal Yisrael was in Mitzrayim and they were being worked 7 days a week by the Egyptians, so Moshe Rabbeinu was very upset because they had to work on Shabbos. Now the Jews were not the most religious people at this time, but they were working on Shabbos. We don't want them to work on Shabbos if they don't have to. So he came to Paro and he said, you know, how can you expect a slave to work 7 days a week and have them crank out maximum output? How is that going to work? Listen, if I were you, Paro, I would make the following suggestion. They should work 6 days a week, and 1 day a week they should rest. Let them rest their weary bones, let them get their spirit back, let them eat a little bit more, let them sleep a little bit more, and then they'll come back the next day, 6 days, they'll be able to work straight. How can you make them work so hard? They certainly cannot be working maximum capacity. And Paro said, you know what, Moshe, you have a very good point over there. What day would you suggest? Let me see, said Moshe. What day? Monday? How about Saturday? Would you be willing to give the Jews off on Saturday? It's a weekend anyway, everyone's shopping, what do you need? And he said, you know what? Fine, they want Saturday off, let them take off Saturday. And Moshe Rabbeinu masterminded that the Jewish people, while they were in Mitzrayim, being beaten every single day, completely entrenched in the impurities of the land, not knowing what their future is going to be, every Shabbos they had a day of rest. And that meant that the little sliver of that neshama that was left inside of them, the little spark of holiness that was still ruminating inside of the lost souls of the Jewish people, had a chance of coming back to life. Because if a Jew doesn't have Shabbos, so then he has nothing. That's why when we ask a person, is that person religious? Well, how do we ask? They shomer Shabbos, they guard Shabbos, they keep Shabbos. Because a Jew that's keeping Shabbos, he knows what it means to be a Jew. At least 1 day a week, he connects in the deepest of ways. The Yavanim, in their wisdom, they understood how precious the day of Shabbos is. Shabbos is called Makor HaBracha. It is the source of all blessing. That's why Chazal tell us, if all of Klal Yisrael would keep 2 Shabbosim, 2 Shabboses in a row, so then Mashiach would come. Really? If all of Klal Yisrael would keep 2 Shabbosim in a row, then Mashiach would come? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I think that if you could find in the world today 1 Shabbos that the 16 million Jewish people across the world would keep, who about 70% plus are totally assimilated, don't even know what Shabbos is, if you could convince all of the Jews in the world to keep 1 Shabbos, how could Mashiach not come? That would be one of the greatest miracles of all time. And yet Chazal are very specific. One Shabbos, not enough. 2 weeks in a row, 2 Shabbosim in a row, that will bring Mashiach. What's the pshat? The Mefarshim, the commentators, explain the following idea. That every Shabbos that a person keeps, when you tap in to the Kedusha and the grandeur of that Shabbos, and you recharge your batteries, and you rejuvenate your soul, so then whatever you gained on that Shabbos, which is the Makor HaBracha, the source of blessing, it's going to have a great impact on the up and coming week. The closer that you get to Hashem on Shabbos, the closer you're going to be to Hashem during the week. The more that you put in your energy into making Shabbos special and meaningful and elevating, the more bracha, the more blessing is going to come to you in the following week. In your parnasa, in your livelihood, in your marriage, in your simcha, in your whole attitude of life, everything is going to be nizbarach, is going to be blessed as a result of the effort and the energy that you sincerely put into your Shabbos. So the Shabbos is a mashbiya, it has an influence on the week that comes after it. But the week that precedes the Shabbos also has an influence on the Shabbos that comes after that week. How you live from Motzi Shabbos, from Saturday night, until Friday when the sun goes down, how you daven that week, how you were honest that week in business, how you treated your wife and your children that week, how careful you were by saying brachas on the food that you ate, how you gave tzedakah, all the different mitzvahs that we have, how you lived your life that week, it's going to have a great influence on your connection to the up-and-coming Shabbos. Because the more that you are connected to Hashem during the week, the greater will be your connection on Shabbos itself. And therefore, say Chazal, if Klal Yisrael would only keep one Shabbos, which would be a miracle in and of itself, wouldn't be enough. Why wouldn't it be enough? It won't be enough because even though that one Shabbos will have a great impact on the up-and-coming week, but there was a week that was beforehand, there was no Shabbos. And the Jewish people were running around the world doing whatever they do as the Jewish people these days. And therefore, when it led up to that Shabbos, you have a whole week of mundaneness. Something else, there's a fancier word, I'm sure, of mundaneness over there, of not being plugged in. And then Shabbos comes. But when you have a Shabbos, and then that Shabbos has an influence on the entire week, and then you come to the next Shabbos, those 2 Shabbosim are connected with so much holiness, then Mashiach could come. Said the Yavanim, the Greeks, they were so brilliant. They knew the secret to the Jew's success, to all of his blessing, because on Shabbos he knows what it means to be a Jew. He could just sit down and take stock and take a breath of spiritual air. Let's take it away. And then they'll be just like us. Then they're in the rat race, and they're just running through that wheel that they do in Petco over there, and they can't stop. And if they never stop, they never catch up with themselves. And if they don't catch up with themselves, then they can never catch up with Hashem. And if they can't catch up with Hashem, they won't have Torah, they won't have mitzvahs, and we'll get them. There's a very beautiful Maisa about a Jew who lives in New York by the name of Rav Chaim Nosson Siegel. He's the Rav in a shul called the New Springville Jewish Center of Staten Island. He's been there a Rav for many, many decades, I believe. And the shul itself has religious, not religious, people becoming religious, people not becoming religious. It's a very, very eclectic group that's in his shul. He was making a chassan, he was making a wedding, and of course he invited all of the members and all the people that were connected to come to the wedding. Now Rabbi Siegel himself is a student of the late Rav Aaron Schechter Zatzal, who was the Rosh Hashiva of Chaim Berlin. Rav Schechter was a tzaddik, he was a man with tremendous, tremendous Torah, Tremendous kedusha, tremendous midas, character traits, and as you'll see from the story, tremendous avas Yisrael and a love of Hashem. So Rav Shechter came to the wedding, and Rav Siegel had a lot of his congregants that were there, and they were all coming over to wish a mazel to Rabbi Siegel, and Rabbi Shechter was shaking the hands of each and every one meeting them. And one guy walks up, and he says, Rav Shechter, he says, this is Steve. True story. He says, this is Steve. And he says, he's an amazing Jew. He davens 6 days a week. And he tries very hard 6 days a week. But 6 days a week only. So Aaron Shechter said, and what about the seventh? So Rav Siegel said, well, on Shabbos he has to go to work, and so he doesn't come to shul on Shabbos. Aaron Shechter was bothered by this. And then Steve moves on. At the end, after everybody was there, Aaron Shechter turns to Rabbi Siegel and he says, where's that balabas? Where's that congregant of yours? He said, which one? He said, the one that doesn't daven with you on the seventh day. The one who's not there for Shabbos, who goes to work. Where is he? He said, it's a big place. I don't see him right now. The next morning, after the wedding, so Rabbi Siegel goes to shul. And when davening is over, it wasn't Shabbos, so Steve was there. And Steve comes over to his rabbi. Rabbi Siegel says, your rabbi, Rabbi Shechter, he loves me. He said, my Rebbe loves you. How do you know? He said, because you know what he did last night at the wedding? He was looking for me. And he found me. And he talked to me. And he asked me, how is it possible that I don't keep Shabbos? How could I come to shul 6 days a week and not come on the seventh day? How do I go to work? So I explained my job to him, and I explained why it is that I have to go to work. And he started asking me many questions. Well, how do you get to work? And what do you do when you do go to work? And what are the actions that you have to do? And we went through my whole day from the time I wake up till I come home at night. And Rabbi Shechter told me many ways that even though I have to go to work right now, I could still avoid being Mechal Shabbos, desecrating the Shabbos. And he told me, Steve, if you can't keep Shabbos completely, do whatever you can right now. Steve ended up, for the next 6 months, keeping Shabbos the way that Rabbi Shechter told him to. And after 6 months, he said, you know what, I had enough. And he came to his boss and he said, if I have to work on Saturday, I can't have this job anymore. Today, Steve is not only frum, his wife became religious, his children are religious. He, I believe, is on like in his second cycle of learning Daf Yomi, all because there was a Rebbe, Rav Shechter, who knows how valuable Shabbos is to a Jew, and he didn't want a single Jew to miss out on the day of inspiration, the day of connection, of getting close to Hashem. And that was the Greeks. Shabbos, take it away. Mitzvah number 2. Rosh Chodesh, which means sanctifying the new moon. The way that it worked in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, you had to have Eidim, witnesses that could testify in the Beis Din that they saw the moon looked like this, it looked like that, and the new moon came at this day of the month. And they would fix the calendar. We're spoiled. We have a fixed calendar forever. So we know when Rosh Chodesh is, we know when Yom Tov is, we know when Pesach is, we know when Chanukah is. It's all there. It's there in the book. But in those glorious days when there was not a fixed calendar, Klal Yisrael set the calendar based on their eidos, on their testimony of what the moon looked like in the sky. The simple pshat, the simple reason why the Yevanim wanted to take away Rosh Chodesh was because if you don't know exactly when the month begins, you'll never know exactly what day it is on the month. And then you might be you'll never know what holiday it is. You might end up eating chametz on Pesach. You'll sit outside of the sukkah on Sukkos. You will not receive the Torah on Shavuos. You'll just never know. You won't hear the Megillah on Purim, and you won't light the menorah on Chanukah. So they said, let's get rid of Rosh Chodesh. But there's a much deeper idea as well. There's something that is unique about the moon that doesn't exist, I don't believe, by any other of the natural phenomena that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in this world. The moon appears in the sky as if it is waxing and waning. It gets big, it gets small. In the beginning of the month, it's a sliver, and as the month goes on, day by day by day, till you hit this middle of the month, the 15th of the month on the Jewish calendar, suddenly you have a full moon. And for the next couple of days, it remains full, and then it begins waning, till you get to the end of the month, almost nothing you can see. Now, is the moon really changing sizes? Everybody knows that when you're looking at a moon, that half moon in the sky, you know that behind the dark part is all the moon. It's just that to the eye down here, the moon looks like it's waxing and it's waning. Where does the light of the moon come from? From the sun. Yes? The sun, depending on where the sun is in the sky, that is where the light is reflecting upon the moon. And that is why the moon is going to look bigger at some times of the month when it's getting more light, and smaller at other times of the month when it's getting less light. But the moon is always the moon. Klal Yisrael Chazal tell us, our Daimel Levana, we are compared to the moon. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Daimel L'Shemesh, he is compared to the sun. That means that all of the light that a Jew has in their life is based upon the reflection of the sun of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that is shining his countenance down on the Jewish people. When his countenance is completely radiant, so the Jewish people shine. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is master panav, he hides his face and turns it away, then the Jewish people, they wax, they wane, and the light goes down. The Jewish people are a nation that have waxed and waned throughout history, thousands and thousands of years. There were times, you'd see us Mitzrayim, we left Egypt. We were the mightiest of all nations. We were shining like a bright moon in the darkest of nights. When we came to our Sinai, nobody could touch us. We're receiving the Nevuah prophecy from Hashem. We're the greatest of nations. But then we make mistakes. There's meraglim, there's spies in the wilderness, and we begin to wane. And then there's going into Eretz Yisrael and getting involved, God forbid, in idol worship, and we begin to wane. And then there are crusades, and there are the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and there's pogroms, and there's Holocaust, and inquisitions, and we wane, and we wane, and we wane, and we wane, and we wane. Did we really get so small? The secret of Klal Yisrael is the secret of the moon. And that is that even when the moon is waning, the whole moon is still there, we just can't see it. And even when Klal Yisrael begins to wane, and they go through suffering and challenges and difficult times, and even when an individual is, instead of waxing and becoming greater, they become smaller and smaller and smaller, a Jew never forgets, nothing in this world is permanent. Everything can always change. And the cycle can always come back. And you can always grow to become that person you want to be. Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, the wisest of all men, had a ring. And on that ring was 3 words. Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass. And Chazal tell us that he looked at that ring at 2 distinct times in his life. When things were rough for Shlomo Melech, when the world was piling up with the enemies upon him, when he was going through difficult times and it didn't look so good for the great king of Klal Yisrael, he would look at the ring, Gam ze yavor, nothing is permanent. Everything can change. Things will come back to where they once were. And I'll be victorious again. But his chachma, his wisdom was that even when things were great and everything was going well, and he was on top of the world, the most revered Melech king, with all of the power, all of the might, all of the wisdom, all of the Torah, all the leadership, when everything was great, he would look at the ring and remind himself, Gam Zeh Yavor, the world is like the moon, it waxes and wanes. I'm not going to be up here all the time, but that's okay. Because even if I fall, and even if I lower, and even if I don't achieve everything I want to, nothing is permanent. It all comes back in a cycle. This is the hope of Klal Yisrael for thousands and thousands of years. The way that we got through every challenging Galus exile in our life is because we know nothing will remain like this forever. Everything and anything can always change. And just as the moon waxes and wanes, Klal Yisrael is that moon. We wax and we wane. And when we wane, that sliver, there's always something that you can see. There's always a piece of the Jew that is still there shining. And if we just tap in and we believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we believe in the power of change, of growing and the like, so then a Jew is always going to come back, always going to be able to grow, always going to be able to crawl out of the hole that they might have dug for themselves, and always be able to shine with radiance once again when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is shining His light on us. Said the Yevonim, said the Greeks, we got to get rid of this mitzvah. Because as long as the Jewish people have hope, and as long as they believe that a new moon will always dawn, and as long as they trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that whatever situation they're in could always change, then we'll never get them onto our side. But if we can show them that life is permanent, and the way that you are right now, that's the way that it's going to be, and therefore we take away your Torah, we take away your mitzvahs, and we force you to become Misyav, to become like us, and now you're stuck in the mire of being a Greek, and there's no hope, so then they'll just come in the droves over to our side, and they'll give up their hope that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will ever change anything. And that, says the Yevonim, says the Greeks, is why we have to be geyser, we have to decree to abolish the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. In the 1920s, I believe it was, before Adolf Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, was a household name, he was a maniacal, crazy, wild person that he began going around giving his drushes, giving his speeches, looking for the broken-spirited Germans who were looking for someone to put the blame on for all the problems that were going on in Germany, and he made the Jews the scapegoat. And he would go to large crowds, to small crowds, to dank, dark places. He would go to big states, wherever he could go to spew forth all of his heresy. That's what he would do. And he was once in this very dark, bar-type kind of a place, somewhere like in a basement type of a cellar, a dark cellar area. And about 75 people came that night to hear who would be the future enemy of Klal Yisrael, spewing forth all of his hatred and all of his great insights into how we're going to destroy the Jewish people. And he was an amazing orator. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him what's called a koyach hadibur, a power of speech. He could arouse the masses like nobody else. And these 75 people, they were enthralled like a pack of wild, rabid dogs, listening to every single word that he had to say. And they were cheering, and they were clapping, they were applauding, who would be the future Führer of Germany. And when the whole night was over and the whole place emptied out, and Hitler was still standing around taking in his masterful performance, there's one older man who's sitting in the back of this room. And as it's only him and Hitler alone, he begins going like this, mocking Hitler, as if to say, what kind of a show was that? Well, Hitler was not a man who liked to be made fun of. And he walked over to the man and he said, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And now the man is smirking at Hitler, which makes things even worse. And Hitler now, his blood is beginning to boil. So what are you laughing about? And the man looks at me and he says, "I'm a Jew." And Hitler looks at him. The man doesn't back down. And he says, "Do you know why I'm smirking? You know why I'm laughing right now?" He said, "Because I listened to everything that you had to say, and I could see you're very serious about what you're saying. And I have no doubt that you're going to try your hardest to implement every single wicked thing that you have said that you want to do to the Jewish people. I have no doubt that you will try and try as you might. But you know why I'm laughing so hard? Because do you know who you are starting up with? You're starting up with the Jewish people. I don't know if you've seen history, Mr. Hitler, but once upon a time there was a man by the name of Paro. He decided he's going to destroy the Jewish people, enslave them in Egypt. And in the end, what had happened to him after so many years of slavery? Paro and his entire nation were destroyed and they drowned in the sea. And then you fast forward a little bit more. And there was a man by the name of Haman, Harasha. I believe he's your relative. And he decided to come and he was going to make all of these Jews be destroyed. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he turned everything around on its head and he ended up saving the Jews, and Haman ended up hanging from the gallows. And what about the story of Chanukah? The Greeks came along, they wanted all of the Jews to assimilate into their culture. However, there was a small band of Hashmonaim, about 12 or 13 in number, weak physically, but great spiritually, and they destroyed the entire Greek army. And that's the way that it's been throughout our history. So you know why I'm smiling? Because I can see that you're serious. And you're probably going to try your hardest to do everything you possibly can do to destroy the Jewish people. But just as Paroi was drowned in the sea, and Haman was hung from the gallows, and the Greeks went running with their tails between their legs and destroyed by a small army, you too, Mr. Hitler, you will just become another name in the enemies of the Jewish people, because who will never be destroyed. Because as much as you despise the Jews, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves the Jews. And for that reason, we will live for all of eternity. And the man, without saying another word, walked out and left Hitler there baffled by himself. Klal Yisrael waxes, and we wane. And the Jewish people never ever give up, because we know that even when we're small, Hashem will make us big once again. Says the Yavanim, let's get rid of that mitzvah so we could abolish their hope. And the last mitzvah, if time allows us, is the mitzvah of bris milah, circumcision. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a world, like he says at the end of the 6 days of creation, V'yar Elokim es kol asher asa. He saw everything that he made, V'yetoiv ma'od, and it was very good. Says the Rashbam on that pasuk in the Torah, what was HaKadosh Baruch Hu looking back at the last day of creation? What did he want to see? And he says that Rabbi Shalom was taking one last glance at the world and wanting to make sure everything was in place exactly the way that it should be. That he didn't have to add anything or subtract anything. He shouldn't change the color blue of the sky or the wetness of the water, nor should he change the chemical composition of the world that's at the H2O that's here in this world, or CO2. He wanted to make sure that everything was exactly the way. And he said, you know what? Toiv Moed, it's very good. It's perfect. Couldn't be better. I'm HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm perfect. I don't make any mistakes. The world is perfect as is. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world perfect, and he did not add anything that shouldn't be here, or he didn't forget anything that should be here. So then why do we take our 8-day-old child, our son, and bring him to the moil and say, cut away the foreskin? Is it supposed to be there or not supposed to be there? Does Hashem leave extra or not leave extra? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu make it that a boy is born with extra skin that we have a mitzvah on the 8th day to remove? And if we don't do that, we are missing out on the mitzvah for this child to make him the Jew that he's supposed to be. Why is that? And the message that we're giving to that child, and we're giving to everybody that is there at the bris, and the message that reverberates throughout time, is that if a person wants to achieve shleimus, completion and wholeness and spiritual greatness in this world, you have to work really hard. And you're going to have to get involved, and you might have to get your hands dirty. And you would have to cut away at those bad midos that you have inside of yourself, or those bad friends that are around you, or that place, or those things. But if you learn how to cut away the things in life that don't belong in your life, and you work on your sanctity and your holiness and your kedusha, that's how you're going to become a sholem, a complete person. The mitzvah of bris milah is a mitzvah that shows man is involved in attaining his own personal perfection in life. And it's not a free gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't come into this world perfect, and you will not leave perfect unless between birth and death a person works very, 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 very hard to achieve their personal perfection. Now, the Greeks had a major philosophical argument with the Jewish people. And that was the following. There's a body and there's a soul. There's a guf and a neshama. Are the guf and the neshama two separate entities? Or are they one entity that is supposed to coexist together as one? What is it? Separate or equal? Or the same, or coexisting? The Jewish people believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took our neshama from up in Shemaim and He brought it down into this world, into our guf, into our body. The body has its own drives, its own desires, what it wants to accomplish, what it wants to do, what it wants to be drawn after. And if a person will let his body do what it wants, finished, game over. But if the neshama takes the driver's seat, and the neshama is guiding the body to do what it needs to do, so then the body, like it says in Kabbalah, is not really a guf, it's not a physical body, it's a lavush, it's clothing for the soul, it's the garments of the soul. And then it's just doing everything it can do in this world to allow the neshama to fulfill its purpose of performing the mitzvahs of Hashem. In Shemayim you cannot give tzedakah, you don't have a hand, and there's no poor person. In Shemayim you can't sit in a sukkah, there's no sukkah. In Shemayim you cannot light a menorah on Chanukah, there's no menorah, there's no candle, there's no oil, there's nothing. Down here in this world, the soul comes into the body, elevates the body, and the body is the servant of the soul, allowing the neshama to perform all of the mitzvahs and service of Hashem it's supposed to. The Greeks were the opposite. They said there's a soul and there's a body. And those two things do not coexist. Yes, it's true you can have great philosophical ideas in your mind and you could plumb the depths of wisdom. But never ever deny your body all the pleasures and desires and the base wants that it has. Just give in because that's what the body wants. And the Jewish people were driving the Yevonim crazy because they saw that there's a nation in the world that elevated the body, didn't let the body draw itself down to this world. There was a nation whose neshama and body were living together as one, and the Greeks said, such a thing is not possible. There is a famous legend that is told about Socrates or Plato, one of the great philosophical minds of the Greeks. He once, in his classroom, gave a rousing drasha to all of his students about the greatness of the soul, the spirit, the godliness that is found inside of a person, and how it can go to the highest of heights and accomplish amazing things. And he said how a person should make sure that they care for that soul, and they give to that soul, and they develop that soul in this world. And later that day, the students were walking through the marketplace in Greece, and they walked past a Beis Zayna, a house of prostitution. And the door opens up, and the great Socrates walks out. I imagine still licking his chops. And his students look at him and they say, Socrates, Rebbe, what are you doing here? Aren't you the one who told us today about the greatness of the soul, the loftiness of the spirit, what a person going to change? And he said, yes. So how could you be over here? And he said the following words, in the classroom, I am Socrates. In the streets of Greece, I am not Socrates. Which means that where I can go into the world of the neshama, I will do, and I will pierce those heavens. But here in this physical world of the body, I'm just a body, I'm just a goof. That's all that I am. Klal Yisrael does bris milah, they're sending home the message to every single Jew that your spiritual perfection is in your hands. You must work, you must do, you must make effort. And that's the way you'll reach greatness and perfection. If we take that away from the Jewish people, so then we take away the sacred mitzvah that is going to be a lesson and a reminder to every single Jew, I got to work hard to become perfect and become better. And so they knocked that one out also. And now you've just destroyed the Jewish people. There's no day of the week that we can just rejuvenate and reconnect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ourselves. There's no way to have the message of the moon, which reminds us there's always hope for every Jew, no matter what is going on in their life. You can always come back, always return. And there's no longer the understanding that a Jew was put into this world, la'amal yulad ha'adam, that man was placed there to work very hard to attain their greatness, their perfection of their soul and their mitzvahs. And once that Yavin knocked all of that out, they knocked out the power of Klal Yisrael. And one by one, and then very rapidly, the Jewish people began to assimilate at record levels, worse than America, I believe. Record levels! And there was barely anybody left that was willing to stand up to the Greek except Matisyahu, Ubanav, and his children, who were the Kohanim, defenders of Avodas Hashem, defenders of the Beis HaMikdash, defenders of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And they ended up going and placing themselves in front of the lion's den, and they were victorious. Because when you cling to your faith, when you cling to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you cling to the Shabbos, to the Rosh Chodesh, to the Bris Milah, to the Torah, to everything that we clung to, the salvation is right around the corner. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's grace is shining down His countenance, and the light is reflecting. You're going to radiate in this world. And that they couldn't take away from the Chashmonoim. And that as we come back to this moment in our history, where we are once again reliving the events of Chanukah and tapping into the Kedusha that is there. Every one of us has what to work on, I'm sure, in our Shabbos. And everybody has what to work on in our faith with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we trust that nothing in life is permanent. Things can work and turn the circle of fate, and things can and will get better. And everybody has to realize how much we have to work on ourselves to become that great person that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be. On Chanukah, you could tap in. On Chanukah, you could accomplish things you cannot accomplish the whole year round. But we have to be prepared in advance and get ourselves ready. And that's what we're trying to do tonight. And think about it through Shabbos Chanukah this year. It's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. It's a double header. The two mitzvahs, if only we'd have a bris in the shul on Shabbos that week. The two mitzvahs that they try to take away, we're going to be living them on that Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. The whole week we're going to light the menorah to show the glory, the victory, the radiance of Klal Yisrael. And if we do that, we will emerge from this Chanukah Yom Tiv different than we were than when we walked in. And if we could gain something on Chanukah, besides the 5 pounds that comes with the jelly donuts, or this year, the Dubai donuts, if we could gain more than just the weight that's going to come to our waistline, but we could expand our vision of what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be ourselves, what it means to keep Shabbos, what it means to have hope and belief and trust in Hashem, what it means to work hard, we accomplished a lot. So Bez Hashem, as Chanukah is still a few days away, we can still get ourselves ready. And even when in the midst of it, we can still get ourselves into it. And Be'ez Hashem Yizrach, and that's a chus. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as He she'asa nisim la'veiseinu, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu made miracles for our forefathers by Yamim Ha'im in those days, Bizman Hazeh, He'll do the same thing once again in our time. We should all see miracles. We should see Yeshuas and Nechamais, salvations, and we should see comfort, and we should see refuah for those who need to be healed, shidduchim for those who need shidduchim, simcha for those who need simcha, parnasa who need parnasa, and we should see the ultimate simcha for all of Klal Yisrael with the bias goyat tzedek, where we'll be able to light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash this Chanukah, b'mheira v'yameinu.